You can start again, Robert.
Yeah, yeah, you're right. Just waiting for it to go live. Okay, everyone. Good evening and welcome. Good evening and welcome back to our Tanya series. We are now beginning finally chapter 35, which is a new subject, a new part of the Tanya, and one of the more fundamental parts of the Tanya. One of the main themes that Alter Rebbe introduced at the beginning of the Tanya was that every one of us has two souls. The first soul, which comes to us at birth or even before birth, is a human soul. The human soul derives from Klipa. Klipa is that realm which is unholy. Okay? It's unholy, it's not godly. God created such a realm, and from it comes the human soul. And that is why this soul is very self-centered. It's not God-centered. It's got one agenda, and that is self-enhancement, self-preservation, more money, more fun, more pleasure, and so on and so forth. And everything we do is to enhance ourselves and to promote that agenda. We have another soul, and that's the godly soul. That's a part of Hashem Himself. That's a piece of God that's instilled in every single one of us. And they both have full persona. It's almost like you have two personas within you working at the same time. And they're both instilled in the same body. And they're at battle with each other. The human soul is looking to take over and by the way, the human soul's place in the heart is on the left side, whereas the godly soul's place is in the brain and the right side of the heart. They're at battle with each other all the time. Who will get control of the human body, of the body? Means who's going to control the mind, what it should think? Who's going to control the mouth, what it should speak? And who's going to control the rest of the body, what it's going to do? Okay? Now, each of these souls has a full persona, as I mentioned, intellect, emotions, and so on and so forth. The problem is that with these two souls, God gave only one body. And therefore, they're at a tug of war all the time. Who's going to take control of the body? The godly soul wants to take full control, and so does the animal soul. And Alter Rebbe also introduced, as one of the fundamental themes of the Tanya, that there are three types of people. There's the holy righteous person. Before I go to that, let me just add one more point. This soul, as I mentioned, has a whole array, both of these souls have a full array of faculties, intellect, emotions, and so on. But at their disposal is also three garments through which it functions. And that is thought, speech, and action. Okay? Now, the soul has emotions. The soul has perceptions, the way it thinks, the way it feels. So let's talk about the human soul for a minute. How does the human soul, what is the human soul's perception? You can think, let's say I hate someone. My human soul has a dislike for a certain person. Can I say to that person, I love you? You can say it. Can you even buy him a gift? You can go out and buy him a gift, even though you hate him. Your actions and your thoughts and your words do not always reflect what's really going on in the soul. You can put up a show. You can say things that you don't feel. You can even do things that are opposite your feelings. So I feel a certain way, but I act differently because the actions are your garments. You can put on a garment, take it off. It's at your disposal. Same thing with thoughts. You can think things that are not based on your perceptions and your feelings. You can turn off the thought, you can turn on the thought, right? You can think about this now, and the second later you think about something else. You can move around. It's like a shirt. You turn it on, turn it off. Put it on, take it off. But you can't start loving that which you hate so easily. If you hate something, you hate it. You can't press a button and say, okay, now I love it. It doesn't work that way. Because that's the soul itself. The soul itself you can't change. It's like your body. Could you change your body? No. Your garments you can change, not your body. Same thing with the soul. Now, there are three types of people, says the Alter Rebbe. There's the tzaddik. The tzaddik is the holy, righteous person. There's the wicked person or the sinful person, the person that sins. And then there's the intermediate, the person that's in between. What's the three categories? What are these three categories of people? So let's start with the tzaddik. The tzaddik is a person that not only does he never think anything bad, or say anything negative, or do anything against God, he doesn't. He also feels. He has a despite. His feelings are all in line with God. He loves Hashem. He despises anything that's not godly, etc. Not only are his garments in line with Hashem, his thought, speech, and action, but his very soul also, the intellect and his emotions are all directed to God. It's all in line with what God wants. He loves God. He hates everything else that's not God. Despises it. The sinful person on the other extreme is a person that not only does he not love Hashem, he also loves himself and loves pizza and loves physical things, and he's attracted to everything that may be not godly, but he even acts on them. Even his garments are not godly. It means he sins in actuality. He speaks things that are sinful, and he even thinks things that are sinful. So not only is his soul not in line with God, but his garments are also not in line with God. The Beinoni, the intermediary person, is that person that's in the middle. He's like the tzaddik. He's like the righteous person who never sins. This Beinoni will never sin. He'll always think the right thoughts, say the right things, and do the right things. He'll never act or say, speak, or think anything that's ungodly. But his inner soul is not in line with God all the time. He does have attractions that are not godly. He'll never act on them, but he does want them. So how does he not act on them if he wants them? He says no to himself. He says, no, I want to sin, but I'm not going to. That's what he does. He's constantly saying no to his desires, to his temptations. And he always wins. He never succumbs to it. But he's always fighting. It's a battle. He wants to be selfish. He wants to do things that are ungodly because it's his own human soul wants that. But he'll never give in. He's always fighting against it and never gives in. Says the Alter Rebbe that the good news for the Beinoni is that he can take control of his garments. You can decide what to think. You can decide what to say. You have full control of what you do. And therefore, this intermediary person, will call him the Beinoni in Hebrew. The Beinoni is always taking control of his thoughts, speech, and action. His garments are all in line with God. But he can't, you can't say that he feels all the time for God. He has attractions that are ungodly, but he'll never act on them. He'll never let them infiltrate his garments. Understood? Okay. The bad news for the so that's the good news for the Beinoni. In other words, even though your attractions are ungodly, but the good news is you have total control of your thought, speech, and action. You can always control it. But it's a battle. It's not easy. You're always fighting against your animalistic drives, and you're never giving in. It's a tough battle. The bad news is that the Alter Rebbe says you may never be, it could possibly be that you'll never reach the level of the righteous. In other words, that battle will go, you'll take that battle to the grave. You will fight your animalistic drives for your whole life. You'll never win. In other words, imagine you tell a soldier in the war, in an army, in Israel, they're going to war now, right? Imagine the general would get up as they're going out to the front lines and says, I want you to know we're going into battle, but we have no chance of winning. You know what that does to the soldiers? They'll never be able to. You can't send the soldiers to war like that. They have to know that they can win. Otherwise, what are we doing here? The Alter Rebbe says the Beinoni, God sent him out to battle when he sent the soul down to his body at birth. He said, "Go battle in this world. I'm putting you in a body with a human soul that has drives, that has temptations, that are very ungodly, and you're going to have to fight it and never give in to those temptations. And by the way, whisper, whisper, you're never winning. You're never going to transform the human soul that it should only want godly things. It's always going to want selfish, animalistic things. And you're for 120 years, you're going to have to say no to it. How encouraging is that? Terrible. It's one thing if you tell me you work hard, you'll get there. You'll be able to one day you'll be able to say, I'm free of this battle. I conquered my animal soul, and it only wants God now. That would be beautiful if we can all accomplish that. Says the Alter Rebbe, no, most people will never be a tzaddik, a righteous person in that way. You'll always battle. You'll always be able to take control of your garments, but not the soul itself. The human soul will always have its desires that are anti-God, and you're always going to have to battle with it. So the Alter Rebbe is asking over here, that's very unfair. That doesn't sound like a fair deal. You send me down to a battlefield, which is what this world is. It's a battlefield between good and evil. And I'm telling you, to begin with, you have no chance of winning this. You're going to fight till your grave. Why'd you do that? Why'd you create people that can't win a war? You've created a battlefield with an inability to win that battle. Who does that?
This is a way to go. This is like the alternative way to go. And you're going step by step. So you come in here, you never will get studied, but at least you are a little closer.
Closer to what?
To be something, to the goal. You are.
What is the goal?
To get studied.
No, you're not going to get closer.
No.
No, maybe. That goal, maybe you're not. Your soul will be in a better place.
You'll lose your.
Oh, so you're saying maybe the purpose is to be rewarded in the other world.
Yeah, maybe it's not to be a tzaddik.
Obviously, it's not to be a tzaddik, because otherwise you would be able to become a tzaddik. But if it's not, in other words, you're telling me that this is a battle for 120 years, and every time you score a little bit of a victory and you'll overcome the battle, you'll get rewarded in the world to come. That's a nice idea. If that's what it's about, so I've got news for you. Judaism is not about the other world. Judaism is not about reward in the other world. We believe in it. Of course, we will be rewarded there. But that's not what it's about. We're not looking to go to heaven to get a better world up there. That's the difference, by the way, between Judaism and all other religions. You know that. Every other religion tells you heaven is better than earth. The only religion that tells you that earth is better than heaven is Judaism. That's the only religion that tells you that. We learned it in chapter 4. It's based on the Mishnah. The Mishnah says 1 hour of good deeds in this physical world is better than all the reward in the world to come. We explained it when we learned it. I won't do it now again. It's not the subject of this chapter. But our life is not focused on the other world. Our life is focused on this world. And if in this world I can't accomplish much, why am I here? What is the purpose of being here if I can't accomplish this? If I can't transform good into bad, evil into good, what are we doing? And take over the enemy. The enemy is evil. If I can't conquer it and put an end to it, why am I here? Why do you send me into the battlefield? So that's the question over here. Okay, let's start it in Alter Rebbe's words. Let us elucidate further.
This question will be
Answered,
answered
of
this
course.
chapter?
It will be answered in the next few chapters. Yeah, it will.
It's based on what, Rabbi?
What?
What you just said now is based on what?
What?
I mean, how did Tanya deduct that from?
That what?
That this is actually more important than
The Mishnah says it. The Torah says it.
but what in the Mishnah says?
It says 1 hour of good deeds, mitzvahs down here are better than the whole world to come, than everything in the world to come. It's better here. The bliss is much better there, but this is the world of. This is where this is where you have to be. This is better than that world. It's not more pleasurable, but it's better.
I know that, I agree with you, the reason is thinking about this world.
And we'll explain it. It's going to be explained. Yeah.
Thinking about, that the Judaism is thinking about this world because it's where we live in and we have the way to change something. But what I say about levels, steps of, so do you think that, when you go to the next world, I don't know, there is still way to learn more and more and more and to try to get to the goal? Or that's it. This is the only way we can.
So I think what you're saying is, and it's with merit, you're right. There's no question that a person that battles, he starts battling. For example, you don't have to tell me, but think in your own mind. What's your most base temptation that you have to battle with? You don't have to say it, but think it in your mind. Okay? Let's say you have some. What?
There are several, not only
Several.
one.
Okay, so let's say we all have our battles. I have temptations for A, B, and C. And sometimes we're embarrassed that we have such temptations, let's say. And you battle with it for some time, and you don't let it ever take you over. You never give in to that temptation. Let me give you an example, okay? Imagine someone has a temptation for alcohol or drugs or whatever, something really, really harmful, terrible. Something that's really got to get beyond. You got to stop it. You have to stop it. And you can't. You're battling it so hard. And eventually, you get to a place where 2, 3, 4 months go by, and I didn't give in to that temptation even once. Another 3 months go by, a year, 2 years go by. Boom! I gave it up. I'm winning this battle pretty much. I'm good. There's no question. Like you said, there's a lot of battles that you have, a lot of temptations. You can get rid of what's going to happen, what should happen, or what could happen, is you should be more elevated in the battles that you're fighting. So, for example, imagine someone is battling with the mitzvah of keeping kosher. He loves bacon. He loves a cheeseburger. I can't give it up. It's so hard. Every time I go through a McDonald's, I want to go in there and eat. And you make a decision one Rosh Hashanah, one Yom Kippur, I'm done with bacon. Never going to go into eat non-kosher meat again. The next day you go through a McDonald's, oh my God, it's really, attractive and I want it. And you say, let me run through it, I'm not going in. And you won, you didn't go in. The next day again, and it just goes on. And little by little, after a year of doing that and not giving in, what's going to happen is going to become second nature to you. You're not going to battle it anymore. You're going to become used to not having bacon, and it's not going to be a temptation anymore. You'll get rid of that temptation. There will be other temptations. Now you're going to have to battle with a little more refined battle. So you can graduate battles, but it'll always be a battle. You may not have this battle, but a battle you will have. And that's
113, not actually.
whatever, yeah. There's always going to be a battle in your life. You're never becoming a tzaddik. But the Beinoni can graduate from one base battle to a little more refined And little by little, your battles become very, very sophisticated, higher level battles, if you know what I mean. I should daven better. Imagine that should be our battle. I go every day to daven, but my davening is not with the best concentration, and that's my battle. I don't battle anymore with the temptation for food and for whatever. My temptation now is within the world of holiness. I'm not doing it enough. I wish I could do it a little better. And you're working, you go to shul, and after 5 minutes of davening, your mind wanders off to something, and you push it right back into the davening. And that becomes the battle. I would be so happy if that was the only battle I had, right? But that happens over time. The higher level Beinoni is a person that battled for 20, 30 years, and he got rid of the base battle, base temptations. He no longer contends with those. But he does contend with battle. He's going to have a battle of some sort. He's not a tzaddik. He didn't transform his soul into his human soul into an ally of God. It's still self-centered. So now the battle becomes, should I learn an hour of day of Torah or an hour and a half? And you're battling with that other hour, that other half hour. And when you win that battle, it becomes a battle of, you know what I'm saying? So you're graduating battles. So, and that's good news, by the way. That's very encouraging. You could overcome your most base temptations, but there'll be other temptations for more sophisticated, more refined things, yeah. So you are reaching a plateau. You're reaching something higher. You're a higher level person, yeah.
So maybe the message is, even though you're never going to be a study, the fact that you are winning levels.
So that's what I think he was saying.
Yeah. The fact that you're winning levels
is good news. Yeah, it is.
You have to reach as high as you could can.
Correct.
And that's your motivation.
Correct. But the Alter Rebbe is getting to the fundamental question.
So Rabbi, my next question on that is, you are, going step by step in the stairs, going up, this moment you die. What is the next step? How you can keep growing?
Your job is over. Once you die, your job is over. But then your soul goes, it's still there, enjoying the reward for everything you did down here. But the work is over. The work is done.
There is not,
that's why it's so important to live here. That's why it's so.
Dimension.
No, that's the reward in the world to come. Over there, you can't do mitzvahs anymore. It's too late. You know the joke they say about the miser? I never gave a penny to charity. And he was very, very tight with his money. And he was a rich man. He was able to give. And he never gave. He gave a nickel here, a nickel there. And then comes to heaven. And they put on, what you do in your life, how much did you help? And this guy didn't help much. So they they prepared a room in hell for him. He's going to go to hell. So he said to the angel in the heavenly tribunal, he says, before you put me to hell, I brought a checkbook. I can write you a big check and give all my money to charity. So the angel tells us, sir, over here we don't take checks, we only take receipts. Over here we need receipts, not checks. I want to see all the receipts that you got for the checks you gave down here on earth. Let me see all the thank you letters you got, from the different people that you helped. The checks, it's too late for a check up there. That's it. The work is down here. Once you die, it's over. It's over in terms of what you can accomplish, what you can do. It's a retirement plan, a nice retirement plan. You enjoy heaven, you enjoy the bliss of heaven. It's great. But nothing comes to a mitzvah down here. Mitzvahs you can't do anymore. And that's why it says, by the way, that the heaven is nothing compared to earth. Because in earth you can do a mitzvah, and with a mitzvah you're in touch with the essence of Hashem. In heaven you can enjoy the bliss of a ray says, what do the souls do in heaven? They're up there learning Torah and enjoying the Ziv HaShechina. Their reward is the bliss in the ray of the godly presence. What's the difference between a ray and the sun? The ray of the sun, the light of the sun, and the sun. Can't compare it. Same thing with God. It's only a ray of God in heaven. Here on earth, with a mitzvah, you got the essence of God. That's why it's much better down here. Every time you put on film, every time you light Shabbos candles, every time you help a poor person, or you help an elderly person cross the street, whatever mitzvah you're doing, that's the essence of Hashem that's enveloping you at that moment. Not a ray. God is His Torah. God and the Torah is all one. In heaven, you get a ray of God. It's a reflection of God, but not God Himself. Understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So that's the difference. Anyway, but the fundamental question Alter Rebbe asks, so we're back to the chapter, is you're right. I can graduate temptations. But at the end of the day, God created a reality of a battle that never ends. And that seems to be counterintuitive. It doesn't make any sense. Who creates a system where you send troops into battle without the ability to ever fully win the war? Does it make sense? It doesn't make sense. It's not right almost. It's almost unfair. You put me into a situation, so send the soldier to the front. You got rid of Hamas, but you have a lesser enemy. Okay, so you have a lesser enemy, but still an enemy. That's not encouraging. I want to get rid of the enemies. I want to have peace and quiet. You can get rid of the missiles, but you'll still have to deal with bullets. Okay, now we'll get rid of the bullets, but you'll still have to deal with people throwing stones at you. I don't want anyone throwing stones at me. I want to be able to drive in the city. I want to drive in the roads of Israel without having a stone thrown at my windshield and breaking my window. I don't want that. So you say, but it's not as bad as a missile. You're right, but I don't want that either. Can I have some peace and quiet? Hashem says, no. In this battle, there's never peace and quiet. Doesn't make sense. It's not fear. You may not be dealing and tempting really disgusting temptations, but you're going to have to deal with some temptation. What? I'm willing to deal with it, fight, give the good fight, and win. But no, you can't win. That seems very unfair. And Alter Rebbe is going to answer, why did God create such a type of person that can never win the war? Why would you do that? I can understand why He created the tzaddik. He goes to battle, wins the war, and becomes a tzaddik, becomes a righteous person, where his entire soul, not only his garments, but his soul itself, is now transformed to become one with God. That's beautiful.
What would be the point if everybody won the battle? Then what's after that?
I don't know. That's the purpose of a battle, that you win.
It's just challenging, but there is no winning.
There should be winning. That's my point.
But you just said that there's no winning.
I know, and that's the question. Why isn't there?
So what would be the point if there were winning?
That's not a question. The question is why? What would be the point if there's no winning?
And if there is winning?
If there is winning, did you went to you gave the good fight?
What's after that?
Heaven?
But here is better.
No, so you can have heaven here. In other words, you can imagine a person fought, won, and now all he wants to do is mitzvot. And he's engaged in that all his life after he won the battle.
That's a tzaddik.
That's a tzaddik. It's the beautiful life. It's a blissful life.
So the tzaddik.
You're doing mitzvahs down here. It's the best place to be, and you finish with the battle. You won the battle.
So can you say the tzaddik actually won the battle?
Yes, that's the difference.
So when he died, he would be losing, right?
No, he won't be losing. Why would he be losing?
It was better here.
Oh, in that sense, you're right. Yeah.
But Rabbi,
In that sense, you have a point.
You told us something interesting.
The previous Rebbe once said that there's going to come a day we're going to long to the days of exile when you had a challenge.
What would be the meaning of the Mashiach, Rabbi?
It's the ultimate goal of everything.
So
it's to get rid of evil. That's the time of Mashiach. All evil will be gone.
But related to the people here on earth, basically.
Talking about the people.
Because he's talking about Mashiach with the dead people. What about
No, Mashiach is with the living people. Mashiach is not for dead people. What was your question?
No, you tell us, the story about, that the tzaddik is like giving food to the body, or not because he wanted it,
Right. He doesn't.
so above to
Right.
so he's like in another world. It's not like us that we are fighting all the time.
Right.
So my point is,
His identity became a godly identity.
yeah, it's like
But his body needs to eat. So he gives the body to eat
yeah,
because
all-
that's
all
what
to
it
keep
is.
alive.
Yeah.
Nothing,
To keep
more than
alive,
that.
exactly.
But he already
He doesn't
in
tempt
another
temptations
dimension,
for
he's
it.
here. He's not fighting like us fighting.
No,
all the
he's
time.
not. He's
No,
done with the
he-
fight. He's done fighting.
His challenge, no, I think his challenge is transforming other people.
A tzaddik can transform other people.
Help people.
Yeah, that's part of
That was the revelation.
that's part of life. Yeah,
That was the revelation.
right. But there was a natural thing to him.
But he's
But
got
not that the game is over when you become a tzaddik.
Well, that's part of becoming a tzaddik is helping other people when you could, sure. And
Right.
then the tzaddik helps other people. So let's see what Al Rebbe says. Let's read it inside. Chapter 35. Let us elucidate further the term to do it. That verse that Moshe says to the Jewish people. The matter of Judaism is very near to you, for you in your mouth and your heart to do. So the Rebbe is going to go on a trip over here on the word la say to do, the action,
I'm sorry, which page are you
155.
on? You turn it to 157.
If I'm going to be in,
Going back, right?
I'm a little
Going
bit.
back.
I didn't.
Starting 155,
Yeah.
went to 157 now.
I didn't go to 157.
Yeah,
No.
you did. Yeah.
Not
we-
157. Oh, 57. Yeah.
we
So
did.
we're going
Correct,
back to
yeah.
155.
I'm going back to the beginning of the chapter.
Okay.
Because we put on the camera. So. Let us elucidate further the term to do it. Moshe says to the Jewish people, the key is to do. Why? Let's understand that. Let us also understand, in a very small measure, the purpose of the creation of the intermediates, the Beinanim, and the descent of their souls into this world to be clothed within the animal soul, which is derived from the klipa, the unholy, and sitra achra, the other side of, not the holy side, since they will not be able to banish her, the animal soul, throughout their life. They can't get rid of her, nor to dislodge her from her place in the left part of the heart. It's always going to be there battling with you, so that none of her impure fancies should rise to the brain, inasmuch as the very essence of the animal soul derived from the klipa, the unholy, remains in the intermediates in their full strength and might as at birth. It's always tempting selfish temptations. Except that her garments, the thought, the speech, and the action, do not invest their bodies. He never lets them take over the body. Okay? As discussed above. If so, why have their souls descended into this world to labor in vain, God forbid? To wage war throughout their lives against the evil nature which they cannot vanquish. What kind of a plan is this? But let this be their solace, to comfort them doubly and helpfully, and to gladden their heart in God, who dwells within them in the Torah and divine service. The Alter Rebbe is going to offer them solace. Very interesting word here. You know when you offer someone solace? You can console them. When do you console people?
When
Somebody
When they're sad, when someone dies, when they're very, very sad. For the Beinanim, this was a very, very sad reality. They're working without the ability to win. This is a very challenging thing for them. It's almost like they feel like the life is meaningless. So the Alter Rebbe has to go, tells them, here's my word of comfort to you. To gladden their heart. I'm going to make you happy with these words. I'll teach you how to really be happy with the service of God, even though you can't vanquish, you can't win the battle. But he begins with a quote from the Zohar. To quote by way of preface the comment of the Yenuka in the Zohar Pashas Bolak. There was a young boy known as the Yenuka, and he made a comment, and it's quoted in the Zohar. It was sometime thousands of years ago. This Yenuka said something. I made a statement, And it was elaborated on in the Zohar. This Yinuka was obviously a very holy child, a very holy person. What did he say? So the comment of the Yinuka was based on the verse, the wise man is the wise man's eyes are in his head. There's a pasuk, there's a verse in Ecclesiastes in the Bible, the biblical book. King Solomon says, the wise man's eyes are in his head. Now, I have a question to you. Do you know anyone whose eyes are not in his head? And the stupid person's eyes are where? In the stomach? What is the meaning of this verse?
You mean brain? You mean brain?
No, it's what it said, the wise man's eyes are in his head. Every person's eyes are in their head. So what does it mean the wise man's eyes are in their head?
He
Means
wanted.
that-
Where else are a man's eyes? That's what Al Tanabah. Where else are a man's? Of course they're in their head. So what does King Solomon mean here? Obviously he means something deeper. But the interpretation of the verse certainly is as follows. We have learned that a man must not walk 4 cubits bareheaded. We have a yarmulke, a kippah. You're not supposed to walk 4 cubits, which is 6 feet, without a yarmulke. The reason is that the Shekhinah rests on his head. The Shekhinah is God's presence. God's presence is on our head. And a wise man's eyes are and everything he possesses are in his head. In other words, in him who rests and abides above his head. That's what King Solomon's means. Who's a wise man? The wise man's eyes are in his head. Meaning, what is the meaning of the eyes? Everything he looks at, everything about him is directed towards that which is on his head, meaning God, meaning the Shekhinah. It means his life is directed towards that which is above his head. Let's read that again. We have learned, but the interpretation of the verse certainly is as follows. We have learned that a man must not walk 4 cubits bareheaded. The reason is that the Shekhinah, the godly presence, rests on his head. That means every person has God's presence above his head, right there. It's resting on you. And a wise man's eyes and everything he possesses are in his head, meaning and in him who rests and abides above his head. And if his eyes are there, he must know that the light which shines above his head needs oil. What's the Shekhinah? The Shekhinah is God. What's God? It's a light, right? It's a fire, the light which shines on your head. By the way, that light needs oil. Every light needs oil. You have to feed the fire. You have to feed the light so it doesn't just go out in a second, right? For the body of a man is a wick, and the light is kindled above it, meaning God, the Shekhinah, God's presence is the light. You're the wick. That's what a candle is, right? What's a candle? A candle is made up of a wick and a fire. But imagine you had a wick and you lit a fire. You just lit Hanukkah menorah, right? So what was did you put wicks in your menorah and just light the wick? It would burn out in a second. What do you have to have? The wick has to have oil. If you have oil, you put oil to fuel the fire, then you have a fire. You need a light, you need a wick, but the wick needs oil. So what's the oil? That's what he's saying. For the body of the man, the body itself is the oil, is the wick. And the light that's kindled above it. And the light is kindled above it. The light of Hashem is above it. And King Solomon cried, saying, let there be no lack of oil above thy head. This is also a verse in Ecclesiastes. For the light of a man's head must have oil, meaning good deeds. What's the oil? The oil of the mitzvahs. And this is the meaning of the phrase, the wise man's eyes are in the head. The quotation of the Yinuka ends here.
This doesn't apply for women, right?
Sure it does. Why doesn't it
Yes,
apply?
women
Not the
also
yarmulke.
cover their head.
They don't. No. They don't need a yarmulke
No,
in that
not a
sense.
yarmulke.
But the concept is the same. The yarmulke is just to show you that the Shekhinah is on her head. A man needs a yarmulke to remind him that. A woman doesn't need a yarmulke to remind her that. She's always aware of it. are on a more spiritual plane than men are.
Women?
That's how it is, yeah.
Mhm.
So a man needs a yarmulke to remind him that the Shekhinah is above his head. A woman doesn't need it. But doesn't mean the Shekhinah is not on her head. On the contrary, it's on her head even more naturally than them. They're more and more aware of it even. So they too need to provide the oil. What's the oil? The oil of the good deeds, the mitzvahs. Okay. So I want to read this quote again because this quote is important. It's a fundamental thing. Let's read this paragraph again. Is that okay? But let this be their solace to the Beinanim. He's addressing the Beinanim. Don't worry, but I have good news for you. To comfort them doubly and helpfully and to gladden their heart in God. It's all good. You can be happy with your situation even though you're never going to be a tzaddik. To be happy with their heart, gladden their heart in God who dwells with them in their Torah and divine service. To quote by way of preface, the comment of the Yenuka, and the Zohar Parshas Balak, on the verse in Ecclesiastes where King Solomon says the wise man's eyes are in his head. Where else are a man's eyes? But the interpretation of the verse certainly is as follows. We have learned that a man must not walk 4 cubits bareheaded. The reason is that the Shekhinah, God's presence, rests on his head. And a wise man, now comes the, and a wise man's eyes and everything he possesses are in his head, meaning in him who rests and abides above his head. Puts his whole focus on that, on what's above your head. And then if his eyes are there, he must know that the light which shines above his head needs oil. If you're going to be focused on it, you know that God's there. You got to provide him oil. You have a fire burning above you, and you're the wick. It's not going to last. That fire ain't going to last if you don't provide it with oil. So you need, if your eyes are focused on that, you need to provide it with oil. For the body of the man is a wick, and the light is kindled above it. So you need to provide oil. That's what King Solomon screams. He cried, saying, "Let there be no lack of oil above thy head." What did he mean? For the light on a man's head must have oil, meaning good deeds. And this is the meaning of the phrase, "The wise man's eyes are in his head." The quotation ends here. So if the wise man knows what's above his head, and he's focused on it. And therefore, he knows that there's a fire of God burning there. It's present. Your body he's trying to hold on to that fire should connect to the person's body, but it's not going to connect if you don't provide it. Fuel it with something that can hold on to the fire. And those are the mitzvahs. Those are the good deeds. The mitzvot that God, the commandments that God gave the Jewish people. That was what this young man said that's quoted in the Zohar. Now, the Alter Rebbe is going to explain this parable in detail. So we go 5 more minutes. Okay. The explanation of this figure whereby the light of the godly presence, the Shekhinah, is compared to the flame of a lamp, which produces no light nor clings to the wick without oil. And likewise, the Shekhinah does not rest on a man's body, which is likened to a wick, except through good deeds alone. And it is not sufficient that his soul neshama, which is a part of God from above, should act for him as oil to the wick. The Alter Rebbe asks an unbelievable question over here. This Yenuka, this young boy, saying like this: there's a fire of God on your head. Your head your body is the wick, and you need oil, right? How do you provide the fire with oil? The mitzvahs. He has a good question. He says, "Wait a minute. Besides my body, I have something else within me. What is that? The sun, the neshama. I have a soul. Why is the soul not enough why is that not good oil? That's godly. That should be sufficient oil for the fire to burn and to be there and connect to my body." So you have the God's fire, the body is the wick, and the oil is the neshama. It's a wonderful relationship. It's a wonderful trial. Why do you need mitzvahs? For this fire to burn. It's clear and understandable to every intelligent person why it's not enough your soul. It is that the neshama of a person, even if he be a perfect tzaddik, serving God with fear and love of delights, this man is on fire for God. He loves Hashem in the highest level of love. Does not nevertheless completely dissolve itself out of existence so as to be truly nullified and absorbed into the light of God, to the extent of becoming one and the same absolutely. Let me explain what the Alter Rebbe is going to say, and we'll continue next week with this theme.
What does mean?
I'll tell you what it means. Let's go back to the physical candle. How long do you lit Shabbat Hanukkah candles this year? What did you use, oil or candles?
Candle.
How long did the candle last?
Wow. An hour and a half or something.
Nothing.
An hour and a half.
Depends on the
Okay.
candle.
Why
yeah.
didn't it last?
But
Why
maybe
didn't
ones
it
like
last
that-
50 hours?
No, not 50.
Why didn't it last 50
I
hours?
don't know.
You don't
Because
know?
They were too little. I don't know.
We didn't
What do you
buy
mean,
a
what's
50-hour
the-
candle.
There isn't enough walks.
There are longer candles they last.
So you need wax. You need oil.
You need
The
more.
oil
You need
burnt
more
out.
wax.
What happened to the oil? What happens to the oil?
It burned.
What does burn mean?
This was not enough.
Where'd it go?
Evaporate.
Just evaporates. What does it mean it evaporates?
Changes
It
state.
loses it becomes completely nullified into the fire. It becomes absorbed in the fire and loses its identity. It becomes one with the fire. Right?
Mhm.
That's what oil is. Or candle, wax, whatever it may be. It's the same concept. In order for it to burn and keep the candle going, it has within it the characteristic that it's able to be completely absorbed in the fire and lose its existence.
It's
Beautiful,
transformed.
beautiful concept. The same thing is with the Hashem's fire. The fire is above us, God. The body is the wick. The wick doesn't get destroyed, right? The wick doesn't get destroyed in the candle, right? At the end of the candle, the wick stays. This wick is there. But what got lost in the fire that doesn't exist anymore, that becomes absorbed in the fire? The oil. So the Alter Rebbe asks, why do I need a mitzvah for oil? Why can't the neshama be in good oil? Right? The neshama is also godly, one with Hashem. So why do I need a mitzvah? You know what the mitzvah answer is?
The actions,
Because
right?
a soul, no matter who the soul is, even the greatest tzaddik, the soul is an existence. It exists and it doesn't become completely absorbed. I want to read those words again. The explanation of this figure whereby the light of the Shekhinah is compared to a flame of a lamp which produces no light nor clings to the wick without oil, and likewise the Shekhinah does not rest on the man's body which is likened to a wick except through good deeds alone, and it is not sufficient that his soul, the neshama, is a part of godliness from above, so that should provide good oil, should act for him as oil to the wick. Why not? That is clear and understandable to every intelligent person. It is that the neshama of a person, even if he be a perfect tzaddik, serving God with fear and love of delights, this is the highest level of tzaddik, does not nevertheless completely dissolve itself out of existence so as to be truly nullified and absorbed into the light of God to the extent of becoming one and the same absolutely. But the person remains an entity apart. You're always going to remain an entity apart, and therefore that can't serve as oil. Because if oil remains an entity apart and is not ready to dissolve into the fire, it won't burn. There's certain oils that they don't flicker, they don't burn well. Because they're not ready to, they don't absorb, they don't become dissolved. And when it doesn't become dissolved, it doesn't burn. It flickers, it goes off. It's not a good fire. If the neshama was the oil, it wouldn't be a good fire. Why? Because the neshama always remains a separate entity.
You say that.
Just 1 second. But the person remains an entity apart, one who fears God and loves him. What's a tzaddik? A tzaddik becomes God. No, a tzaddik is an entity that loves Hashem, fears Hashem, serves Hashem, but it's an entity, and therefore it can't be oil, because it can't absolve, and I mean it can't be absorbed 100% and dissolve into the fire fully. The only oil does, but something that's not ready to dissolve itself into the oil can't serve as oil. Torah and mitzvahs, the good deeds of a man, will continue to say, that is total absorption in godliness. That's oil. When you do a mitzvah, you're one with Hashem.
Yeah, my question is, this mitzvah is the oil, but this oil is also give food to your neshama or only to God? So it's like, you know what I mean?
It gives you neshama connection to God, of course.
Gives you your neshama.
Yeah, but the neshama can't be the oil. The neshama itself can't be the oil.
But the mitzvah will give you the oil for your neshama to be closer to God.
Yes, for sure. That's the purpose of this fire.
You're absorbed.
We'll continue next week. Thank you very much for watching, and we'll be back next week, hopefully. God willing.